I graduated from Dodgeville High School. I've always played basketball. I was actually a starter for my entire basketball career.
22, junior, Eric.
He was the type of person that you could have him do anything. As long as he wanted to do it, he could do it and do an excellent job.
So I was extremely active through high school. I did all the sports.
I'm from Barneveld, and so the first time I actually saw him was at my graduation.
That was the first time I really saw her too.
So it all started there.
Well, I mean, it's nice that you left out the stalking part, because I don't consider it stalking.
It was
I consider
stalking.
it determined.
I kept saying no.
I don't necessarily find it stalking, just a determined person looking for somebody. So
I was going away to college and I didn't want a boyfriend.
that's what you
And
told
I
me
made that
too.
very clear.
Very clear. I don't want a
didn't work.
boyfriend. It's just bad timing. And 2 weeks later, I couldn't get her to leave me alone.
I mean, after it was over, I think he called right away to say what it was like, and he just thought it was a thrill.
She got you jumping off the deck, shoving into overdrive.
So it would have been May of '09, I got laid off. I picked up a job with M&I. Basically my job was to go to a farm and check bin levels for corn. And it was kind of then that also I really started to realize that my energy level was getting really poor. I was noticing that climbing the bins became a struggle. Like what a 30, 40-foot bin shouldn't be anything for me to just haul up, pop the top, look inside and come back down. But by the end of it all, I'd have to take 2 or 3 breaks on the way up the ladder because I would be so winded.
And Eric told me later that, you know, a couple times he had to stop along the way and he couldn't catch his breath. But we knew he'd been going to the doctor for a cold, which they said was pneumonia. So, you know, that'd be hard on your lungs to be climbing up there like that.
Because she knew I'd been sick, so I was just letting her in on, you know, yeah, I'm still not getting better, it's terrible, and this and that. And I said, you know, now my ankles are all swollen.
Well, I've been taking my dad to the doctor for a heart condition, and that's the first thing they check. And I go, Eric, you call the doctor right now. I said, there's something wrong.
It was Dr. Bishop. It wasn't necessarily an emergency, but he decided to see me because of what he'd been told. I was just waiting for him saying, you know, it's probably this that's causing your ankles or this. You know, I didn't expect anything big. But when he came back in the room, he said, Eric, I've called the ambulance. I need to have you sent to Upland Hills to have you prepped. And I'm like, prepped for what? He said, well, I took a look at your x-ray and your heart is, and I don't remember, there's a lot of blurry parts, but I know it was big enough that he was extremely nervous about it. And as they were trying to get me prepped for the ambulance ride, something happened and they completely called off the ambulance and they said, we can't risk taking you by ambulance, we have to get the helicopter here.
But it's a huge shock and a lot of denial, like saying that I know this kid's heart will recover. You know, I know that this kid's heart will recover, and it just didn't.
He said that the best course of action, in his opinion, was to have what he called an LVAD implanted in me. But the LVAD was going to pump blood for me so that the heart didn't have to work so hard. And they said, you know, in some cases, if the heart gets a chance to rest and we put you on these meds and, you know, we get your rhythms back, we can take the machine out and you get to keep your heart. But they were very, very adamant in telling me, we don't think that's going to happen with you though. Your heart is in bad, bad, bad shape.
I first heard about Eric through his grandparents, Millie and Buford. They come in every morning and exercise in our maintenance program. They, like I said, gave me daily reports on him, and then the next thing I heard that he needed a heart transplant, and I was just couldn't believe it. And then I heard, oh, he's going to have an LVAD, a left ventricular assist device. And I was like, holy cow, you know, this is big, this is really big.
It terrified me. I think it terrified Becky too, because This actually was caring for a living human being who was dependent upon a machine for his life at that particular time. And if we had to do anything with that machine, or if anything went wrong, it was just a tremendous responsibility.
We could not take a normal blood pressure with a stethoscope. We had to use a Doppler and do an arterial blood pressure because his LVAD didn't transmit the pulse like it would normally.
For someone who doesn't exercise, and then to have to start exercising with a machine on you, it was hard. It was hard in the beginning because I was not very, I felt really worn out because of the way things were, and then having to lug this machine around on a bike and a treadmill. But, Becky and Marianne, they push. They push. Becky and Marianne took good care of me while I had the LVAD. They had me lifting weights. I needed to put weight back on. I needed to become more healthy. I was not healthy enough at that point after my LVAD surgery for a call to come in and say, we have a heart for you, because I was not strong enough to live through another surgery. But all I knew is that when I was going to therapy, Becky and Marianne wanted me to be healthy enough so that if at any time it came up and they said, you know what, your heart is in, get up here, we want to transplant you. I think they made it a personal goal of themselves to get me in the shape so that they knew that I would be ready. It's just a little comical, almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Like ironic, I guess. And I got a call about 7 o'clock. She comes on and she's like, is this Eric Blabaum? I said, yes, it is. This is so-and-so with the cardiac unit up at UW Hospital. I'm just calling to let you know we have an offer to give you a heart. And my own heart sank. I was like, oh, okay. I said, I can be there in probably 45 minutes. Okay, that sounds good. Just get here. I said, you got it. So I hang up the phone and I go to grab my batteries. There's no batteries. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm yelling. And I start out with a yell. Pam! And then it gets louder. Pam! And it gets louder. Pam! I'm thinking, this is insane. I've gotten a call. There's nobody around. What is going on? Apparently my mom had heard me from upstairs. Apparently she went out on the balcony and told Pam, Pam, I think Eric's yelling for you. So Pam comes strolling around the corner. I'm red in the face. I'm like, where have you been? We grabbed the things I needed. Pam's like, how fast do I go? I said, floor it. Just go as fast as you can. I said, if you get pulled over, tell them why we're going. We'll probably get an escort. Just go.
I was getting on the phone and calling people, and they said, do you want to come with us? And I said, no, you guys go ahead and I'll come later. And it's not that I didn't want to go with them, but I had this overwhelming urge to cry. And I knew I had to get that out before I left here. I had to say a prayer and then I could go. And that's what I did, and then I was okay. And
We kind of had a rule that if you were going to cry through the whole thing, everything, the LVAD, and he couldn't be in the room. Oh. So to not cry when he left, it was really hard. It was really hard. You don't know how long it's going to take, but it was after supper time when they finally came up and said, he's out of surgery and the heart's beating.
We were ecstatic. We were cheering and laughing and happy and so excited, but then of course we're like, oh my gosh, we got to pray for this now, that he gets through this okay and everything works out, which it did.
A very nice thing anyway was going back for the first time for the after the transplant for my therapy is Becky and Marianne had two of the biggest smiles I'd seen in a long time, and they both gave me this huge hug, and they were so happy to see me, and I was happy to see them because I knew that meant that I was going to be back on my way again, and I knew how well they did with me the first time, so I was more than happy to, give in to them the second time and say, all right, do it again, get me back there.
It was such a joy to see someone that young get a chance again. At a full life. I mean, the man had just been, he was a young husband and needed and deserved that chance at a full life.
And I just felt like a big sense of relief, like this was just a regular patient then, and I can work the heck out of him. Because he's young and he has a good heart now, so I was like, all right, now I'm gonna giver, and he did.
I guess my thing was, why not me? You know, it happens to other people just because it's, you know, a rare thing. You know, not everybody needs a heart transplant, but several people do. So why should I be excluded from such an equation? You couldn't have picked a better person for something like this to happen to. Not that like I deserved to go through it, but just that if someone had to, why not someone who had the kind of support that I had?
We just can't even say how appreciative we are for Dr. Bishop for catching this. We can't thank the emergency room enough for getting Eric in the right place, in the right position to be able to improve. We can't thank the community enough for all the support that was poured out for our family and Eric. And there's no way we could ever repay everybody for things that they've done for us, and including the hospital, including Dr. Bishop and his clinic. And we just are very thankful that we've got Eric still with us. So
the most common thing I hear, followed by my most common response, is, well, you haven't changed at all, have ya? And my response is always, they gave me a heart transplant, not a brain transplant. I'm still me. I said, you're still a wisecrack, aren't you? Oh, absolutely. I still got it in me. But to this day, if you had no idea what I'd been through, you would have no idea what I'd been through. Because you cannot tell by looking at me that I've gone through that kind of situation. And I owe a lot of that to Becky and Marianne and getting me back on my feet as fast as they did. Number one, because I had a 4-month window, which I didn't know and neither did they, but they knew, you know, the importance of getting me back into shape in the right amount of time. And even though you don't think it's going to be as soon as 4 months, I got lucky. I only had to have that machine for 4 months, but because of the work they did, I was ready. I didn't have to wait. I didn't have to get declined because, you know, that's one of the reasons they have backups, because if they call you in and you're not ready, they need somebody else there. And because they had me ready in a 4-month span, I was lucky enough to get my transplant 4 months later.